Today we're going to be talking about images inside of Photoshop and how you can move items from one image to another, dealing with the tabs at the top. Sometimes this can be a real frustrating part of Photoshop until you get used to it, so we're going to go ahead and get into it. Now before we start today, I had to give you a slightly different type of file. Usually I give you a PSD you can click on and open it immediately into Photoshop. But today I need to give you a list of images. And in order to get multiple images at once, I'm going to give you zip files. Now this may contain anything from PSDs to AIs to JPEGs along the way, but for today there are just a few JPEGs in here. Now to open this on a Mac, you'll double click on this zip file and that will unzip it, and you'll end up with a folder called Images CC on your computer. On a PC, you will right click on it and go to Extract All. Once you've clicked on that, make sure you're saving to the same location and hit extract. It'll take a moment and then you'll end up with a folder called Images CC. You might have to click into it a couple of times, and what you'll do is find these images right here. There should be 7 of them in total. So you've got some planets, you've got this Milky Way image, and this silhouette image that we're going to turn into a silhouette. Now to open these, you'll need to select all of the images. You can click, hold, and lasso like that. You can click on one, hold shift, click on another, or you can hold control or command and click on each individual one if you need to. Whatever floats your boat as far as selecting them. And then you need to open all of these into Photoshop. Now you can click and drag on these on a Mac and drag them to the Photoshop icon down at the bottom. That will open them up in Photoshop there. On a PC, you can click, hold, and drag these directly to Photoshop, and that will open them there. Now there is also the option of going up to File, Open, and opening them that way. Now, we've got our images set up. If we look at the top, there are little tabs, just like a browser on any one of your programs. You can see these different tabs. Each one of them contains different images. Now, if your screen is fairly small, you might see a couple of arrows in this location. I don't see it on mine, but you can see where the couple arrows would be in this area. You can click on that image right there if need be. Now, once we've got our images inside of Photoshop, we need to kind of figure out what we're doing with them. Our goal is to cut out this girl, everything but the umbrella, and we want to turn her into a silhouette, pure black. We're going to place her in this image of the Milky Way, and then we're going to add all of these little planets, and these are going to be balloons that are holding her up in the sky. So that's our final look that we're looking for, is a girl holding balloons, floating up like the movie Up, holding a stack of balloons. So to do this, we need to start on the silhouette. And keep in mind that the Milky Way is going to be our home document. That's where everything's going to come back to. But we're going to start on the silhouette image. Now, first we need to see what we're looking at here. The reason this image was selected was because of this look of the legs and how it looks like she's kind of floating in the air already. But there are some issues with the image. So zooming in at the hand, we can see this crossbar of the umbrella. I want to make sure I don't have that in the final image. Now, hit W on your keyboard. That'll get your quick selection tool. If not, click over here and find your quick selection tool. And we're going to make a selection of this girl. I'm going to start at the hand at the top, and I'm going to kind of work my way down. So let's zoom in so we can see what we're doing. On the hand, I'm going to click one time, hold, and drag down on the wrist. I'm going to go to the elbow and the arm. Now, as you do this, it'll do little snaps and pops along the way. And if your mouse is a little bit off of her, you might end up snapping and popping off into this tree area in the background. That's okay if you do. Remember, holding Option or Alt, you can deselect and clean up any area that you didn't want to get. So I'm going to go through and select her, keeping in mind that as I look at this image, some of the pixels, the colors on the girl, match the background very closely, specifically that hair and this jacket right here. It's very difficult to get this in the first selection. Usually you have to come back and retouch this selection. I'm going to go down to the legs and the feet, make sure I've got all of that. This little area underneath this leg likes to get selected, so I'm going to hold Option and clean that up. Right here under the umbrella, I will hold Option again and I will clean that up. So I want to have a pretty good selection of the girl. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to silhouette her anyway, but pretty close is what I'm looking for. Make sure you check that hand. You might need to make your brush a little smaller in order to get that. Alright, zooming in on the wrist, I can see these bars that are extruding from the wrist. Now when we black this out, these little areas are still going to show up, so I need to make sure to fix this. I'm going to hold Option again and click and drag through this, trying to make kind of a straight line here. Use your imagination as to how the wrist would look if you didn't have that bar right there. So that's what I'm looking for. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Alright. Once I have a pretty good selection of the girl, I can go to my layer mask. Now remember, the layer mask is putting this filter on top of it that makes everything that's not selected invisible, right? So down here at the bottom in your layers panel, you're going to look for this little white square with the black circle, layer mask. When I click on that, it cuts her out. Now this is a good time to look at this image real quick. What we see here is this checkerboard pattern that's happening in the background. Checkerboard patterns like this represent transparency or opacity. You can see through it. If I were to print this image right now on a yellow sheet of paper, everything that you see that is the checkerboard right now would come out the color of that yellow sheet of paper. So this means there is nothing there. That's all it is. Now we want to be very careful in our next step, because what we're going to do is turn her completely black. There are destructive and constructive ways of working here. And what I'm about to do could be considered a destructive method. If I were to save my document after I do this next step, there'd be no going back and fixing the issue that I had. And I always want to be able to go back and fix to be able to see my original image. Now, the layer mask and the image are two different things. If I were to start drawing on this actual image, I would end up painting whatever color I have selected. This is destructive. So if you're seeing the actual color, that is a destructive method. Now to combat that, I'm going to make a copy of this layer so I always have the original. Two quick ways to do it. You can hold Control or Command and tap J. That will duplicate your layer. Or you can click on that layer, hold and drag to the plus symbol at the bottom. That'll duplicate it as well. Name this layer, double click on it, Girl, so that we know which layer we're working with. Now if I look at my color selector over on the left, I've got black and white. To flip these, I can hit the X button on my keyboard. That'll flip those back and forth. Be very careful here, because if I'm painting black and I'm on the layer mask, I'm going to be seeing invisibility, right? So we don't want to see that. The real problem here is because we have the second layer, if I were to draw on that layer mask, I don't see anything happen. That's because that bottom layer is visible. So let's turn that bottom layer invisible so we can see what we're actually doing. Let's click on the image itself, and let's make sure we have black as our foreground color. Now I'm going to draw black straight through this girl like this. Now the smaller brushes might take a little bit longer. Make your brush bigger. You can do this in a couple of quick pulls of the mouse. So we want to select the girl by having the image selected, B for brush, click and drag black in that area. Good. Now this is destructive, so if I turn that layer mask off, you can see what I've actually done here is drawn black on the original image. That is a problem if I were to save this document and come back to it. So that is my silhouette cut out. Now I need to move her to the Milky Way image, and a couple of ways to do this, because there's 100 ways to do anything in Photoshop. The way I teach you may not be the best way for you. One way is to click with your move tool on this image, hold and drag it to that Milky Way image. Now I'm seeing where my mouse is, not where the actual image is. I'm going to go to the middle, and then I'm going to release my mouse. That'll place that image in the Milky Way. Another way to do this would be to hit Control or Command C, that's copy. Go to Milky Way, Control or Command V, as in Victor, to paste that in place. Now, the image comes in fairly large for what I want. I want this dramatically smaller. If you have Show Transform controls on, you probably already see this bounding box around the outside. If not, you can use Command T, that stands for free transform, and you can shrink this down. Now I want her fairly small. I want her to look like she's floating in a very small place. So about like that. Alright, next we're going to go to the planets, and we need to layer mask out all the planets and bring them all in. So let me demonstrate this on the easy ones and then move my way up to the harder ones. So we're going to start on Venus. Venus is fairly easy because there's no shadow line that's happening with Venus. Venus is fully lit up, so it's very easy to select. I can use my quick selection tool for something like this where I have no shadows. It's going to make a very good circle for me. I'll hit that layer mask. I'll copy and paste this image to the Milky Way. And then I will scale it down hitting Command T. Fairly simple, easy to do, right? Hit return or enter on your keyboard right there at the end to lock that transform into place. So Venus was easy. Let's look at one of the harder ones. Let's go to Mars. Now Mars has this shadow that's happening on the left side of the image. If I grab my quick selection tool and go through Mars, you see it pops and grabs that sky on the left. I could clean this up holding Option, kind of coming back and cleaning up like this, but if you look carefully, your line's going to look a little ragged and not clean. So this creates a problem for me. Things with this shadow are problems. To fix this, I'm going to grab my elliptical marquee tool. M is the shortcut. Now I'm going to start in the middle of the planet with my cursor. I'm going to click, and that's going to start making my oval. Now I'm going to keep holding my mouse down until I tell you I release. Now I want to make a perfect circle because Mars is a perfect circle. I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard. That gives me a perfect circle, but you see it's moving up and down to the left and right in kind of an awkward way. If I add Option or Alt to my click, that's going to drag it out of the center. So that's what I'm looking for. Now, if you don't end up lined up perfectly, if you end up off a little bit, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure the circle is the same size as the planet or very close. Then you can move it into location. Once there, hit your layer mask, and that will cut out Mars for you. Command C, Command V, paste Mars into the image. Now notice that when Mars comes in, it's on top of Venus. That's because the last thing you bring in will always be on the top of your layer structure. Now the last one that's more difficult is this 4-piece image of the gas giants. These are fairly simple. Saturn is the more difficult one. So I'm going to demonstrate on Saturn, but you do this on each one of these because I want all of the planets. Now with Saturn, I need to make a selection of it and the rings, and this creates a couple of issues. The planet is not exactly circular. It's a little bit more oval shaped. I'll get it close. It won't be perfect. That's okay. I'll grab my quick selection tool and I'll come in and select these rings. Now again, not going to be perfect. The rings kind of fade out in some spots. Hold Alt or Option to try to clean it up as best you can. Over here on this side of Saturn, it's going to want to grab this black area in the middle. That's okay. Hold Option or Alt, clean that up as well. Now the real trick here is what happens when you've got the actual planet selected, because the other three are easy. All right. So you're going to create your layer mask, cut out that planet. Command C, go back to the Milky Way, Command V, and paste that planet into place. You can make it bigger, smaller, whatever you need. Now remember, if you make things bigger in Photoshop, they tend to pixelate a little bit, but not really a concern right now. When you go back to the gas giants, instead of trying to figure out what happened, how to fix it, just hit Command Z a couple of times, Command D to deselect, and there you have your planets again. You can grab the next planet in the set, holding Shift and Alt or Option, and cut that planet out, Command C, bring it back to the Milky Way, Command T if you need to make it bigger. So go through all of the planets real quick and grab each one of them, bringing them to the Milky Way. Alright, once you have all your planets in place, we no longer need these extra tabs. So we can get rid of Mercury, don't save, no need for it because we don't need this anymore. Same's true with the rest of these. So I'm just going to exit out of these, hitting no on don't save. And that includes the silhouette. Make sure to get rid of it too. Now, when we get to our final version, we now have our planets in place. They're all stacked. I want to make sure they're a little more artfully stacked, a little cleaner, maybe a little bit more on top of each other, kind of a bundle of balloons, right? So I want to make sure that they're fairly tight onto each other. If I want to change the planets, where they're located, noticing that Earth right here is on top of these other planets, if I want to make it below, I can just drag it down in the layer structure until it goes underneath the other planets as I want. So once I've got my balloons in place, I've got my girl in place, I need to grab my layers and group them. Now grouping layers is fairly simple. We just need to make sure that they're all put together in one single group. So click on layer 1, and all of these layers that are unnamed are your planets. So I'm going to select all of them. I can hold Control or Command, click on each one, or I can click on the bottom one or top one, hold Shift, click on the opposite, and that will select all of them in one. Now Command G is the shortcut for group. There's also this little folder icon down in the bottom of your layers that you can utilize as well. Either way, create a group and name that group planets. Now click on the girl layer. Last touch we need for this is to add strings going up to her. So if we think about balloons lifting a person up, they're going to be real tight strings because they're lifting weight, right? We wouldn't have little squirrely lines going up to the top. So I'm going to create a new layer that's hitting this plus symbol to the right of the layers panel. And I'm going to name that strings. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard to get my brush. Now I created a new layer because anytime I brush for real, I kind of want to put it on a new layer so I can get rid of it, bring it back, whatever I need to do depending. I need to shrink my brush down, very small, 1 pixel. And over here in your color picker, I'm just going to flip my colors to make sure white is on top. Now the trick here is to make sure the lines are tight. To do that, I need to draw a very straight line. And if I were to click here with my mouse and try to drag a straight line, it's not exactly easy to do. You'll end up a little wiggly along the way. So to make sure these are tight lines, I'm going to click 1 time on the hand with that mouse. You're not going to see anything happen. Just 1 click right on the hand, let go. Nothing's going to change. Hold Shift on your keyboard and then 1 click again up on one of the planets. And that will draw a straight line up to that planet. Do it again. Click 1 time on the hand, hold Shift, click on a planet. Go through and click on each planet along the way so you end up with a bunch of strings that are coming off of this hand, looking like they're all going to the different planets along the way. Now, once we have our strings, we could do a couple of things. We could lift these strings up to be above the planets. That way you can kind of see them a little cleaner and where they're going. I think they look okay underneath the planets, so I'm not going to argue with it. I can kind of tell what it is. Now I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to look at the image real quick. I think it looks pretty good. If I want to raise her up like she's flying further up, I need to select all the layers. So click on the girl, hold Shift, go up to planets. So you have all of those layers selected. Grab your move tool, click, hold, and just move her up. And it'll look like she's flying up into space. So you can put her kind of wherever you feel it feels natural. Make sure she's in the center of the document. Now the last touch is an experimentation real quick with your text. So hit T for your type tool, click down here on the bottom. I want you to type your name, please. Select that text, go through, look at your different fonts that you have, and we'll look into how to download some fonts at a later date. Find a different font, make sure it's nice and big. You've got a large font, mine's at like 400 points. Change the color of that, and this time in changing the color, I want you to ignore the color picker itself. So click on the color and then come over here to the actual image and click with your eyedropper tool on one of the planets, the background, the sky, something that matches. Hit OK. Last, I want you to experiment with your layer styles. So with your name selected down here at the bottom, over in your layers panel, you have your name selected. Hit this FX button right here that is your layer styles. And I don't care which one of these you put on, but I want 3 of them selected and placed on this text. So go through and try your bevel and emboss, try your inner shadow, try your inner glow, try a few different things. And as you do it, make sure you're adjusting these bars so you can kind of see this wherever it is. So if you want that inner glow, play with the options so that the inner glow looks right. Try the color overlay if you'd like. You can alter the color very quickly like that. Go to your pattern overlay or your gradient overlay and create a unique look to you. Whatever you want it to look like is perfectly fine, but you need to have at least 3 of these checked on the left. Once you've got it, hit OK. So what we did today is we took multiple images that we worked with in order to create this overall look. We brought them all from their original images, their original tabs, and put them onto this one single tab. So in the real world, you're going to be opening hundreds of images, merging them all into different documents. You're going to need to be able to move things along the way. In the layers panel, I do recommend naming your layers where possible. I am terrible about this personally, so I do understand if you don't like naming your layers. But when your layers panel starts to get more complicated, you're going to need to know what's where quickly. So this is the end of my crash courses. From this point on, we're going to start moving a lot slower, looking at more specific things along the way. So that's your daily dose of design. If this has helped you in any way, please subscribe to the channel and keep building your creative toolbox. See you in the next one.